So that's what I'm saying. The text is like an object. It's gonna change perspective based on where you're standing.
I don't know.
Hello?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I missed you, baby sweet. It was a day.
It was a day.
Please tell me you're seeing this too.
From Seattle, we're Drinking the Movies. Taylor Baker from Drinking the Movies, joined again by Anna Harrison, our special Marvel correspondent, back with me to discuss all things Spider-Man No Way Home and Guillermo del Toro's newest film, Nightmare Alley. Thanks for joining me again, Anna.
Yeah, thank you for... Is Marvel correspondent my official title now? I thought it was a joke, but you've used it twice.
It's both.
Okay.
There's no way to deny that it's true, but we haven't formally filed any paperwork.
Okay.
So it's really just one of those things where if you just push it, then
right,
no
it'll
one's
happen.
gonna say it's not true. Well, it's already really happened.
Right. I will be expecting a raise once I file the paperwork, just so you know.
I look forward to that paperwork coming across my desk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'll be there. Don't worry.
So initial impressions of these titles we're going to be talking about after we get to first impressions. Spider-Man No Way Home, Nightmare Alley. What do you think?
Well, as a professional shill for Marvel, I very much enjoyed Spider-Man No Way Home. And I also liked my Nightmare Alley. I was expecting, I liked it more than I was expecting to. Excuse me. And the cast was very good. It looked beautiful. In terms of enjoyability, Spider-Man takes the cake, but what can you do? But I like both of them.
They're definitely going for two different vibes.
Yes,
entirely. But before we dig into,
both have Willem Dafoe, which is a plus.
I would say that they might both have Willem Dafoe.
Okay, he was in the trailer. He was in the Spider-Man trailer. That's not a...
He might have been. He might have been.
Oh my God. That's not... Okay. Okay.
Before we dig in any further to either of those, let's start with first impressions. We're going to go through and view the trailers for Everything Everywhere All at Once, as well as Dog. Let's start with Everything Everywhere All at Once.
He's waiting in the wings.
The universe
He speaks of senseless things.
is so much bigger
Script is you and me.
than you realize.
Of all the places I could be, I just want to share with you.
Remember our mission concerning the fate of every single world of our infinite multiverse.
There is no way I am the Evelyn you are looking for.
Every rejection, every disappointment has led you here. To this moment. Don't let anything distract you from it.
All right, Anna, that was the trailer for Everything Everywhere All at Once from the Daniels. What do you think?
That looks great fun. I'm thrilled to see Data from the Goonies on the screen again. That's very exciting. And yeah, great cast. Looks really fun. Does not look like a Russo Brothers production. I say that with love, but it looks way more interesting than that. However, it is a Russo Brothers production. So it's good to see them branching out a bit.
Yeah, knowing the Daniels a little bit, I would suspect that the Russos are really just a source of funding rather than a source of creative inspiration.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so the Daniels have previously made Swiss Army Man, and this shares a lot of the tonalities of the absurd, farcical stylings. It's I don't know that I'm that intrigued by the story it's going to tell, but I'm looking forward to the amount of fun I may have watching it, which is kind of similar to what happened when I was watching Daniel Radcliffe play a zombie fart jet ski that Paul Dano rode around on in Swiss Army Man. So it's interesting. I don't know about Jamie Lee Curtis's villain. That seems a little bit like too on the nose and farcical as I was watching it, but seeing Michelle Yeoh play all these different versions of herself looks like it's going to be really fun.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Looks like a great, fun roller coaster thing. Looking forward to it. Those are my thoughts.
All right, let's move on to Dog.
I need to get back in the game, sir.
You want to get back in the game? Prove it. Sergeant Rodriguez was a legend. Family funeral Sunday outside of Nogales. They want his dog at the funeral. You do this, and you're back in the game. She won't work with anyone. One minute she's good, the next minute she's sending 3 guys to the ER.
What's up, dog?
And you're gonna go on a little road trip. Easy. What are y'all so scared of? Smell it out big time. What is your deal, man? Maybe just take the crazy down 1 notch. Hey! No! No! You're just a demon. You're just a demon.
All right, Anna, that was the trailer for Dog, Channing Tatum's directorial debut, along with Reed Carolyn. What do you think?
That looks like a dog movie. Feels like, there's going to be some tension with the dog, and then they're all going to work it out, and they're going to learn something along the way, and it's going to be heartwarming and very, perhaps a little overwrought and whatnot. But I think Channing Tatum is hilarious. So, depending on the reviews, I might check it out. It's not something that immediately grabs me, but I'll keep an open mind.
Okay, I like the lots of different noises.
Well,
that's definitely
sometimes
emblematic.
Thank you. Yeah, sometimes it's just hard to properly articulate things, so you just have to.
No, I think you nailed it. I think that's
Thank you.
definitely. If I wasn't so interested in him as a performer and artist, I'd probably overlook this. I'm especially surprised that I think it's only getting a theatrical release. It doesn't look special really visually. It has kind of the same cues that we've seen in the Magic Mike films of the naturalism, but it doesn't have Steven Soderbergh's prowess of getting those to do a little bit more than they do. But these side characters, one of which is played by Jane Addams, who is always terrific and steals the show. Even in movies I don't like She Dies Tomorrow, like her scenes are just really overwhelming. And there's the friend from My Name is Earl, who has that small role. I think that the story though seems a little bit contrived. At the beginning of this trailer, we're introduced to the premise of him coming to train a dog, and then somehow over the course that we don't see, he goes from training that dog to embarking on a Pacific Northwest trek, where he just walks the whole way down to a funeral for her master. It just makes no sense, and we already saw the footage of the funeral, so we already know he makes it. So unfortunately, this trailer undercuts a lot of its senses, but I'm interested in the comedy, and I'm interested in seeing if he can pull this off, not just as performer but as director.
Right. Yeah. Well, I don't think, to be honest, I don't think the people that this movie is trying to attract mind much if the trailer spoils what happens in the end, because the point isn't the plot, it's the dog and the cute human dog bonding or whatever, and you bring your tissues and you're like, oh my god, dogs, great, whatever.
Yes, yeah, the more mass market appeal of it. I take umbrage to the fact that you don't think that I'm someone interested in this movie, though, because it is a directorial debut, and those are always things that I like to find the next director that I'm gonna fall in love with. So that I
just want Channing Tatum to do 23 Jump Street. I'm not even gonna lie. I think he is hilarious in this.
They're
I think
doing
there should be another
spin-off
one
now, and I know that he's producing it with Jonah Hill, but I don't think there will be another one.
Same.
But there should be.
It's not the
I agree.
same.
I agree.
God. Yeah.
All right. Well, if there's nothing else, let's move on to Spider-Man: No Way Home.
Excellent.
Spider-Man is all but invincible, but Parker, we can destroy him.
This is all my fault. I can't save everyone. But together we can. You are not alone.
Peter, you're struggling to have everything you want. While the world tries to make you choose.
The longer you do it, the more dangerous it becomes. I want to help you.
Remember, kid, with great power.
All right, Anna, you've seen Spider-Man No Way Home. I've seen Spider-Man No Way Home. We are going to talk about Spider-Man No Way Home. And to do that, we actually have to exclusively talk about spoilers because the entire film is built on what would classically be called spoilers. So if you don't want to hear spoilers, please proceed to the Nightmare Alley review. And otherwise, Anna, let's get started.
All
Spider-Man
right.
No Way Home. Bad movie, right? You didn't like it?
No, don't put words in my mouth. Don't gaslight me. No, I obviously, of course, as predicted, had a great time. Not just because, I mean, spoiler alert, they brought back Toby and Andrew and Willem Dafoe and Alfred Molina and Jamie Foxx and all these people, which was great. But they also managed to fold them into the movie in a way that served the MCU Spider-Man, and also, like, for Andrew especially, wrapped up some of his hanging arc threads. And it's going to inform the story moving forward. It wasn't just pure fan service. And
well,
it was okay, but it was fan service in a way that did actually have bearing on the plot and the story and the character arcs. So
I might be able to meet you partway on some of that stuff.
Okay.
I think that I also liked a lot of what you're saying, but like the idea that the multiverse occurs and then they didn't, like, I would have much rather seen everything we saw and then one more that we've never met, like a Spider-Man that was never a Spider-Man, because otherwise this just rings as thorough fan service. There's no surprises here. It's things that and characters that we already know and have seen.
But the thing is, I mean, like, the fact that these are characters that we already know and have seen them grow, or in Andrew's case, get cut off, rip. But that makes it so much better for the story because we already have all that knowledge coming in and we understand.
If you've seen
gives
them.
it more weight. Yeah, but it is the assumption if you're seeing that movie that you at least have some knowledge, even if you haven't seen everything, you at least know that Tobey Maguire was Spider-Man at one point, right?
Right, but I can point to Into the Spider-Verse for an eloquent way of introducing multiple characters that were never introduced before, that people are not familiar with from a film, and still having, gravitas and moments of, emotionality, even though you didn't have a previous history with them. And I think that the fact that they only relied on fan service entirely, and that they didn't even pay off the biggest lead into this, which maybe you'll disagree with, but I think that the biggest like Easter egg lead in was the Venom movie, and the way that they handled that was just really annoying.
Disagree. I mean, there's never, I don't think it was ever on the table for him to actually fully appear in this movie in a way that wasn't exactly what happened. Yeah, no, I don't think that's just not going to happen. So I think this was the best way for them to.
Is there a reason why?
I think
or is that just
it's weird Sony Marvel shenanigans, and the fact that, like, there have been things where Amy Pascal has been like, yes, Venom is in the MCU, and Kevin Feige's had to be like, no, he's not. So this is a good way to actually bring like a symbiote into the MCU and not also deal with Venom, because then that's like too much. I mean, honestly, because it's also very confusing for, I think, just the way that Sony and Marvel have handled their like branding for the Spider-Man stuff, where Sony's like the Sony Spider, they haven't even really done their own thing in the Marvel Spidey's like MCU Spidey, but then there's also the Sony one with Venom and Morbius or whatever. That's just really confusing. So I think this, where Venom was just in the after credit scene and they left the piece of Venom behind, is the best way to do it without causing it's too much to keep track of, honestly.
Okay, so this is over my head. Is it going to be another Venom, or is it going to be a different symbiote that I don't know about?
Unsure.
Okay, so
I don't know.
That's not for sure yet. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have preferred Tom Hardy in the MCU. That's my personal preference, but
I mean, I would love Tom Hardy in the MCU, but
I guess I get the Sony and MCU head butting. It's just the end of that, and the end of Venom and the way that Easter egg played. Like, I really thought that he was like at least going to be like in the movie proper, not just relegated to an Easter egg at the end, which bummed me out. And the fact that there's no Topher Grace, I mean, come
That
on.
is a crime. Honestly, that is a crime. I think they should have put Topher Grace in there. Best villain of Spider-Man 3. I'll say it. I'll be brave and say it.
So you rewatched most of the Spider-Man movies before
I
the Spider-Man?
watched all of them. So I actually
Okay.
hadn't seen the Sam Raimi ones until like the past couple of months. I'd seen the Andrew Garfield ones, but when the Sam Raimi ones came out, I was like the first one came out when I was like 3 or 4 years old. So I didn't see that. And then my parents, no one that I knew was really into Spider-Man at the time. And then I only started liking superhero movies with the Avengers, which was the first one I saw in theaters. And then I just never got around to watching the Raimi ones. And so I did that leading up to this. So now I have the full
picture.
breadth of
And did
knowledge.
it play better for you knowing everything that happened very fresh?
Absolutely.
Did you feel like that
Yeah.
that made a big difference?
Yeah, absolutely.
So when we did the first impression, I'd expressed concern about the direction of Alan Watts and you, John, sorry, not Alan.
Wow.
He's a bigger deal to you than me. How do you feel about it on the other side? Do you think he improved his direction, that it was about the same, or that he took any chances or risks that you were surprised by?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if the biggest chances and risks were really like they're more story driven. It wasn't like there wasn't a really cool visual sequence like there was in Far From Home with Mysterio. There wasn't anything like that. It looked mostly like the other Spider-Man movies, but where it's going story wise, I think is really good. And I thought the way that he had Toby, Andrew, and Tom all bounce off each other was really great. I really like that. I think he gets the banter between characters. I think that is he does that very well.
Well, so you mean the way that he was presenting the banter, because he didn't write it.
Right. No, I just mean the way that like it's staged and the way the actors are performing it, like because he didn't write it. Yeah.
So I mean, starting from the beginning, you're already at the end. What do you think about the buildup of how they're dealing, how they set up the multiverse, everything that happens?
I mean, MCU magic shenanigans, I don't think too hard about them, honestly. I was having a good time. It's nice to see, especially having just watched the Sam Raimi, Andrew Garfield, Sam Raimi, and then Mark Webb's Spider-Man movies. They're definitely, the kids, Spider-Man, Peter Parker is supposed to be in high school, and then Sam Raimi's goes on to college, but it's not really talked about that much ever. And then I think one of the things that has separated the MCU one is that they actually really emphasize the fact that he's a kid, that he's in high school. So then the beginning when they were talking about college admissions and everything, I liked that because it actually shows, he had to apply and he doesn't just like magically appear at college one day and it's not a big deal. Although they only showed him opening 3 letters, which I'm like, buddy boy, you did not just apply to 3 colleges, but whatever. That's an aside.
He might not be that smart.
Yeah, I don't know. And then honestly, I think I love seeing Doctor Strange because I think he's shaping up to be my favorite Phase 4 character, just because I think he's a very interesting character, and I think Benedict Cumberbatch is very good in the role. So I really like seeing him in this. It was an understandable. I don't know. It was really. I didn't have any huge issues with it. I thought it was fun. Great.
Well, why don't do you want to set up what happens?
Okay, I will set up what happens. Peter is public enemy number 1 because J. Jonah Jameson has unmasked him, and so legally, as my best friend Matt Murdock, played by Charlie Cox, explains in great fashion in one scene, and he stole the show. I love him so much. I'm so happy he's back. But it can't do much legal. No one can do much legal action against Spider-Man, but he and his friends are getting rejections from college admissions because they're like, we don't want to touch that. So in order to rectify this, Peter goes to Doctor Strange and says, hello, can you do a spell to make everyone forget I'm Spider-Man? And Doctor Strange says yes, but then Peter says, oh wait, actually, can you make it so, you know, my Aunt May remembers and my friend Ned remembers and MJ remembers and all these people. And so that messes up the spell. Doctor Strange shuts the spell down, but a little too late, and things went awry because then it's pulling in everyone from the multiverse who knows that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. It's pulling them into their universe. So that's how we get the reintroduction of Green Goblin, Doc Ock, and Sandman from the Raimi movies, and then Lizard and Electro from the Mark Webb movies. And then around the halfway point, maybe, Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire also come in as their respective Peter Parkers. And that's
a good summation. So you dropped a little thing in there about how your favorite Phase 4 character is the wrong Benedict. And I just got to say that the correct Phase 4 favorite is the actual Sorcerer Supreme.
You're right. I'm sorry. I should not have disrespected Wong like that.
That's my personal preference. I actually don't know who all the Phase 4 characters are properly, I guess, currently. And I'd probably be more convinced by someone like Wanda than most of the other ones, just because of her like real stakes of like who she is and her psyche. I find that complex character a little bit more intriguing to my sensibilities. But no, I think that the film is a little bit more thoroughly presented than I was expecting, which was a pleasant surprise. The cinematography was really consistent. I think it's the first time that he's worked with a cinematographer whose name is Mauro Fior, and he'd previously done I think Southpaw, and he worked on Avatar and Smoking Aces, The Island. So he's been with a lot of different auteurs, and so I think that he brought a little bit more visual distinction to the cinematography himself.
Yeah, I am remembering. This isn't. I mean, there are definitely, like, I just remembered that shot where it's Peter standing in the rain, and there's like the electronic billboard thing of J. Jonah Jameson talking, and that shot, I do remember that really stood out to me. I thought that was really lovely.
A lot of like
just like
the
standing in the rain
shots
crying.
Work in a way that I don't remember them looking that intriguing before. Like they looked a lot more sophomoric. And this, I mean, at bottom it is what it is, but I still think that visually it was a lot more composed than it had been in my previous experience with these films. I thought that there was some extra bloat to it. I mean, there's a crucial moment which happens, which you did not get into, but you know, all these people come into this world and he has to try to imprison them, and so that they can deploy a cube to send them back home, essentially. And Marissa Tomei's Aunt May wants Peter to cure them before he sends them back so that they don't die, because they were all brought here as they were dying or dead. That's kind of unclear and left up in the air. And so within all that context is this idea of kind of superimposing the gravitas that Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man had to begin with.
The gravitas that Topher Grace's Venom had.
Yes, exactly.
I agree.
No, Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, I mean, I grew up with those, so they left much more of an imprint on me, but like there was a great emotionality to that line the first time it's delivered, and we get that line delivered here again.
So with great power comes great responsibility line.
Exactly. And it just rings really shallow the way that it was presented. I didn't feel like it was earned, and it was really it just felt forced on the screen. But
honestly,
Aunt May gets killed by Willem Dafoe, Green Goblin.
That is a sick fight sequence though. Like Willem Dafoe, oh my God, he was amazing. Obviously it's Willem Dafoe. He was amazing in the first Spider-Man, but like without his mask, and you could see all his just batshit facial expressions, and he was just wrecking Peter. I wasn't rooting for him, obviously, but I loved watching that. I loved watching him.
I completely agree. There's this thing we do at the Seattle Film Critics Society where we have to vote for the best villain of the year.
Oh my gosh.
And I've been like, I don't even know what the best villain of the year is, like the whole year. And then, I mean, he's not in that much of the movie, but I was like Willem Dafoe is like, when I think of villain and I think of 2021, like this is the villain I think of. I don't give a shit about like any of the other villains really in all the movies that I've seen. He's just so memorable. And that the arc of his smile and how sinister and high he can get the sides of his mouth is just chilling.
Yeah. And that hold on, two things. One, the scene where Peter, his spidey sense goes off and he senses that something's wrong when all of the villains are just hanging out, and he like is walking through them and then figures out that Norman Osborn is what does he say in the first Spider-Man movie? He's like, Norman's on sabbatical or whatever. That was my terrible Willem Dafoe impression. But Norman is dormant and the Green Goblin is, out ready to cause mayhem. I really liked that scene. I thought they did the Spidey sense. I thought that was really cool in this movie. There's also a moment where Doctor Strange astral projects Peter, and you can literally see the Spidey sense, like in the comics, they're like little wavy things above his head, just really faint. And that was really cool. But the other thing I was going to say is that I feel like I agree that the line I was kind of like, okay, whatever. But the line with great power comes great responsibility at this point, I feel like has been memed so many times and has been stated like over and over. I do think it would be hard, not saying they couldn't have done better, but I think it would be hard just in general to have that line really land because it already has and everyone knows it and it's so predictable at this point.
Not only did it land, it's iconic. I mean, you watched the original trailer, like when that line is delivered, it fundamentally becomes the essence kind of the character, doesn't it? Like it just works in a very deep way where it's like, it's a writing problem. Like you just shouldn't have tried to make this thing like that thing at that level.
Yeah.
Have her talk around it, have him be a little bit different.
Yeah, I agree because they did that in Civil War when he's first introduced. They did a very similar thing. He said, oh gosh, what did he say? It was basically like, when you can do the things I do and you don't, the people that get hurt because of you. It was a line like that. And it's basically the same thing, but it was said in a different way. So
which rings a little bit true. Yeah.
Right. So people could understand, okay, this is his version of that speech, but it's different and it works really well. So I kind of thought they were never going to do that in this MCU Spider-Man. And then they did, and it was fine. I think
it really, for me, and I can only speak as me, like it removed a lot of the emotionality of the moment because they were forcing another emotion to go with it. And like, if you would have just let Marissa Tomei's Aunt May pass in that way, like it's really sad. And it's really sad because of Happy and that relationship, which was never explored in the other Spider-Mans, to my knowledge, of that character. And I think that just adds another beautiful layer to it. And we already like had everything we needed from her goodness. Like the reason he's trying to do the right thing is because she'd asked him to. She doesn't need to say that line to build that emotionality. So that's, writing wise, that's where it clunked for me.
Yeah. I mean, that's fair because they definitely were like, oh, we have to have someone say this. So let's give Aunt May our Uncle Ben moment, but it did not, I didn't care that strongly about it. Cause I don't know. Again, I also wasn't, I didn't grow up with the Sam Raimi movies, so I wasn't as emotionally attached to that line. Most of my knowledge from that line had come from memes.
Gotcha.
So,
different experience. For me, I think they always released on May 3rd, which is incidentally my birthday. So they were my birthday movies when I was very young. So I've got a particular affinity to that Spider-Man.
Yeah. No, I totally understand that though.
So Tom Holland, what do you think of his performance?
I thought he was great. I thought this was, I think he's consistently been really good. I think this is I think this is probably the best he's been. He was also really good in No Way or Far From Home, I thought. He definitely, I mean, I think he's a great Spider-Man. He holds his own very well against Tobey and Andrew. Although Andrew Garfield, just talent-wise, is just a cut above everyone. And
Every single person really besides Willem Dafoe and Marissa Tomei and John Favreau.
Everyone.
Yeah. No.
Everyone.
Those three, they're also very good. I am a slight Andrew Garfield fan myself.
Nice shirt. It says Tick Tick Boom on it.
It does.
For all you
This is bribery from the Netflix people to try to get me to vote for that.
I'd vote for it.
Yeah, he's terrific, and the softness of his voice and the emotionality of his eyes, like he can get you to feel things just by talking. And I really love Tobey Maguire. I really think that Tom Holland is very competent, but neither of them can make me just swoon emotionally with words and start to feel and resonate in totally different ways and just talk about Emma Stone's character, whatever her name was, Gwen Stacy.
Yeah. That killed me.
Right.
Man.
Just get you right in the feels. And that's a credit to him. I do think Tom Holland was doing a little bit more believable work with his dialogue acting than he's done in the other Spider-Man movies. I think the aging is starting to catch up, though.
Yeah,
I'm glad they're going to college.
Yeah,
I'd like to see them skip whatever's next, though, and just go to like year 2 or 3. Like we need to catch up and get these guys a little bit older. It's kind of hard for me to believe that Jacob, what's his last name? Yeah, that he's really that young. Like it's and his wig is a little bit difficult to buy into
the wig was
these days.
The wig was not good in this movie.
What do you think about the Happy arc?
Wait, I had something else to say about Andrew Garfield really
Please
fast because I love to talk about him. No, I was just gonna say that this really, I genuinely believe that if he had been given better writing, he would be like everyone would think he was the best Spider-Man, because I think he's just fantastic. And I think this really just made me sad because I saw him in this movie and then I was just thinking back to The Amazing Spider-Man 2 and what a kind of mess that was, but he was always so consistently good throughout. And it just really made me bummed because he also, if you watched a bunch of interviews with him, as I have done,
I have not done that.
I have. Whatever. It's too many. I've watched too many interviews with him, but like he seemed very passionate about the character and very sad when The Amazing Spider-Man 3 and all their build up to the Sinister Six or whatever just completely fell through. So I'm really glad that he has gotten a chance to be this character again. And also I think his Peter had a very nice end cap because he, where he in The Amazing Spider-Man 2 failed to save Gwen Stacy and she died. And it was terribly sad and I'm still upset about it. But he, in this one, when Zendaya falls off something and Tom Holland's Spider-Man goes to catch her, but then he can't, Andrew Garfield's the one who goes in, catches her, and then he starts crying when he lands on the ground. And I was in my seat and I was about to cry myself. I was just like, oh my God.
Well, there's a line, right? He asks her, "Are you all right?" And she says, "Yeah, are you all right?"
I know.
And then he says, "Yeah," and starts crying. I think that's what happens. And it just, he's a heart melter.
He's just, God, it's just really the injustice of it all, of how the Amazing Spider-Man movies had such a banging cast and then threw it away. Just makes me
they were really poorly written and they were really clunky from what I remember.
No, you are exactly right. Amazing Spider-Man 2, not good. And then they made a bunch of, the fact that they were making jokes about those movies in this movie was pretty funny. I thought, when they were like, Jamie Foxx, how did you get to be this way? And he was like, I fell into a vat of electric eels. but then also Sandman from Spider-Man 3 was like, hey, I fell into this pit of sand or whatever. And then
Don't
Lizard
fall in
was like,
things.
yeah. And then the Lizard was like, Jamie Foxx, Electro, didn't you have a comb over and bad teeth? Which is not, which they just make a joke about it and they don't address it again, which is hilarious, I think. Anyway, I got sidetracked by Andrew Garfield. You were gonna move on though. Oh, you were gonna ask
I
about
wasn't
Happy.
moving on. I just wondered what you think about the Happy through line, because he really is actually, and a very smart choice, I think, kind of the under writing theme character of the film. He's the guy that is where they're living, that's allowing like this moral mission to take place. And he's the one at the end that has to not only process the grief of someone that broke up with him, that he's in love with, dying. He also has the sensibility to, like a dad, tell him to run.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
I just think that he's got one of the more interesting arcs.
Yeah, I love Happy in these movies. I thought, in Far From Home, when he comes and picks up Peter in that tulip field after Peter got whacked by Mysterio, and they have that really nice scene on the plane. I thought that was really nice. I did really like how in Far From Home, because he and May had a little flirtation in that, but it was mostly treated as a joke. And here it's still, it opens with May breaking up with him basically, so it's still kind of treated like a joke, but then they use that to actually give him a lot of pathos, emotionality.
So hold on, in Homecoming wasn't he chasing after her there too? I haven't seen it in a long time, but I could have sworn that he was like,
I think you're right.
He was immediately infatuated, and he was like ignoring Peter, and then as soon as he's like, this is your aunt, like he was let me introduce myself, I'm gonna step in the house.
I believe that. I cannot recall, though. That's kind of embarrassing on my part. I should be able to recall.
Well, you would have watched that quite some time ago, and you would have watched a lot of Marvel movies since then.
That's true. I guess I can't remember him in Homecoming.
Well, he's representing Tony, right? And like he's bringing the suit in that ends up being the suit that he vanquishes or whatever, survives Vulture with or something.
And then, he takes him to Germany, and then Peter's trying to contact him. I don't remember him and Nate talking. Whatever. It's a moot point. I believe you. Either of us could be right. I don't even know what I'm saying, but my point is, Happy is great, and I'm glad that they actually use this kind of joke thing to give him a nice arc, like you were saying. And it broke, oh my gosh, at the end, when he's standing at May's grave, it broke my heart when he was to Peter. He was like, how did you know her? I was really upset. I was so upset. That was really upsetting.
That unfortunately didn't work for me. That was too on the nose. That was too overtly structured for that whole play.
Lame.
Sensibilities are sensibilities. Zendaya, Jacob Batalon, they have this buddy relationship going with Peter, and romantic for MJ's role, but they're all trying to play like these cohesive friends. Did it seem kind of gratuitous at any point to you, or did it all work?
Oh, I thought it all worked. I mean, I don't know, just I don't know. I was just thinking about all my high school friends. I feel like that's exactly what there was no interdating in my high school friend group, but I mean, I think, what do you mean by gratuitous? Like they were playing into it too much?
Yeah, like every single conversation they had was playing into the stakes that they'd already set up every single time. Like they were you never in these movies really just get them hanging out ever, or just talking. Like there's always a secondary purpose for dramatic effect, to foreshadow something or to reference something. They never interact just to have an interaction. And I especially over the arc of the movies, like it's just starting to ring a little bit hollow, where these are just the people that he goes and talks to in between the sub objectives until he gets to the main objective of the movie. like every single time. And I just wish that there was a more sincere engagement of these people's identities and who they are. But that's,
Okay.
for each one of
mean,
those, I also appreciate the fact that Andrew Garfield had to clean the cobweb on the top of the ceiling.
yes, bless him. Well, I think Homecoming, from what I can recall, did have a lot of Ned and Peter, kind of at least enough to be to where the audience would believably think, oh my God, yeah, these are best friends and I feel it. So I think that's carried over. I think MJ has gotten a lot. I think the past Far From Home and No Way Home added, I think, a lot to her character, from because she wasn't really a huge presence in Homecoming, but I think Far From Home and No Way Home did do a good job of adding to her character, even if it wasn't always focusing on her, but it was just the little things. You kind of got a sense for her. And I like Zendaya as a performer. I think she was good. So I didn't really think about that, but also, I mean, that is a common criticism of Marvel, where it's like, all of these conversations are just building blocks to the next big action set piece or whatever. There's not a whole lot of room for the characters to just kind of breathe. And I did think that throughout this movie, it was just because it is such a big movie, and they were just going like foot on the gas pedal basically from the first minute. So I understand. I think that's a valid criticism. I totally bought their friendship though.
Yeah, it's not even that I don't buy it based on the buildup. It's just like, for the essence of this film, which is just this film, it really reads like quest objective. And I'm a long ways away from Homecoming, but I remember myself remembering that I thought that most of the interactions that he was having with Jacob were like always building up this idea that like he doesn't know that his best friend is Spider-Man. Like that was always kind of the subject at the bottom of all the conversations. And there's things that I like, even though I didn't respond well to Black Widow, where there are actual conversations between Florence and Scarlet where they're just talking, and it doesn't serve, I mean, maybe it fills in the backstory, but it doesn't actually serve the narrative proper to have these conversations. And that's something that I wish that we'd see a little bit more of, just this naturalistic conversation.
I agree. I do think though, I mean, I think Tom and Jacob and Zendaya all play super well off each other. So I was fully prepared to, even in the conversations where they were just espousing plot points, I still liked the chemistry that they had, and I was still feeling their actual relationship going on. I don't know what I'm trying to say. My point is, I think even though the writing was very kind of, here's the plot points that we're going through, I think they performed it in a way that allows you to get a more holistic picture, even if the writing does not necessarily support that.
I think I can, I think I mostly agree. Like, I think that they're all talented performers, and that what they were performing is my problem. But I think that they did their job as well as I could expect them to. So we've gotten around to most of it. There's one more thing that we need to go over before we get to the finale, and that's only because you love Succession, and there is one
Stewie.
Succession character within this.
Yes.
What did you think of Arian's character, Agent Cleary, and was he fun in his limited moment? Did you have a good time?
Great fun. I had a blast. I was really upset because my the two friends who were gonna come, who watched Succession, didn't end up they weren't able to come. And so I saw him because he was in the trailer also, but I saw him and I like poked my head out to go and tell my friends. I'd be like, oh my God, it's Stewie. And then they weren't there. And I couldn't say anything to anyone. And I just had to lean over to my other friend who was there. And I'm like, that guy's in Succession. He's really good at Succession. And my friend was like, I don't care. I don't care. But I love that. Also, Danny Rojas from Ted Lasso in the after credits scene.
Oh,
that was very exciting. So 2 cameos, although Stewie had a bigger role than Danny Rojas, but I thought he was great. I I don't know. I think I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Moyet. But
yeah, I don't know where he's from, but it's I would guess it's Moyad, but if it's French, maybe the D is silent. Moyet. I have no idea.
well, he's Iranian, I think. But anyway, I'm sorry, Aaron, if you're listening to this. It's my bad. Anyway, I think he's just a very fun actor and very watchable. So I was having a blast.
Awesome. So there's a climax that occurs. The lead up to that, which you've already slightly addressed, is this wonderful moment that is comprised of great direction to the actors, to the cinematographer, to the editors on the back end, making this Spidey sense thing come alive.
Mm-hmm.
We put this thing on Jamie Foxx's chest to do something with power, and we in the audience start to get this like queasy off feeling. And the sound of this thing as it charges up and pulls electricity from his body sounds extremely nefarious the higher it gets.
Yeah.
And it ends up that these solutions, which have their own problems, and that they're not explained at all other than a fabricator, they potentially end up being nefarious. I actually don't know if that thing that was pulling the electric charge was actually going to destroy the room or what it was going to do or not. Do you?
No, it wasn't. I mean, it was trying to make Jamie Foxx not Electro
Are you
anymore.
sure?
I'm pretty sure, because the reason he rips it off at one point, because that's when he's like, okay, actually, I still want this. So I'm not going to have.
So let me specify. Do you know when Willem Dafoe went from Norman to Green Goblin?
Like specifically?
Yes.
No, but
because there's the potential that that's a bomb being charged from his electricity to attack them, right?
I think you're reading too much into that.
You think so?
Yes.
I thought that it was pretty unclear over like when exactly he turned, because he gets that eerie feeling, I think, when he's back in the fabricator room working with Peter. So you didn't have that reading at all. I've talked to somebody.
I didn't
completely agree with me. So interesting.
I did not get that at all. I genuinely thought it was pulling the electricity from Electro, so he wouldn't be Electro, and that he just decided to, he was like, well, screw it, I don't want to deal with this anymore. I still want to have all that power, and took it off. But I don't know. I need to rewatch it, because I've only seen it once. I mean, it is Saturday right now, and I saw it on Thursday, so it's not like I've had oodles of time to see it again. But I will see it again, I'm sure, multiple times, and I will watch that carefully.
Yeah, keep my interpretation in mind, and if I'm wrong, I'd love to know. It was mainly cued in by the sound and the way that it was ticking up and the nefariousness that was happening around there. But eventually,
I just figured the nefarious sound was just to build the tension as Electro kind of realized that he didn't want to actually lose his power. But I might admit that maybe in this one instance I could have missed something.
Well, simultaneously,
probably not.
Like in the same moment that he's taking that off, we're finding out that Norman is Green Goblin now, right?
Yeah.
So there's two things happening as those sound cues are occurring. So all that to say, they'd cured Doc Ock and they hadn't cured anyone else. They were in the middle of curing Electro, and then everybody kind of dissipates. There's these fight scenes. And eventually we go to the Statue of Liberty, which is holding up Captain America's shield.
Lord, I saw that and I turned to my friend and I said, that thing better fall down. And it did.
Yes,
so
it
very
was
glad about that.
Moving environment stages, kind of like Mortal Kombat. So at that final scenario, we have our three Peter Parkers, Tom Holland, Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield. And we have all the villains, and they're going to cure all of them after they go and make a bunch of cures without any specificity about what they're doing.
You just gotta roll with the flow.
I will respectfully disagree, but I understand the sentiment.
I mean, I feel like every single superhero movie, MCU or not, has this thing where it's just, you don't want to waste your time explaining science that isn't real. So they're just
Yeah,
gonna
but
pretend
if
that
they would just
it's
say
fine.
like what's happening or like what it does at all, instead of just sticking a syringe in and magic occurring, I'd be a little bit more able to buy into what I think is the cool thing, which is that Peter is supposed to be scientific and technologically like
Yeah.
solving problems. But this is a great giant set piece. It has fantastic action. It introduces uh, Ned Leeds, that's Jacob's character, right? As someone
Yes.
who can potentially do magic in the future. And he has a gate, and that's how they get to that location, and chaos ensues. What do you think of this chaos?
I had a great time. I loved watching the different Spideys flying around. And I also think it was interesting, they would catch little things like Andrew's Spider-Man. When I was rewatching the Amazing Spider-Man movies, I noticed that he was just a lot more acrobatic in how he swung through New York. And he was striking a lot of different poses and whatnot, whereas Toby and Tom are just kind of swinging. Like it's cool, but it's not super flashy. Andrew had a very flashy way to swing, and he did that they used that in the fight, and I thought that was really nice to just kind of differentiate the different Spider-Men. And you could always tell, even when they had their masks on, you could almost always tell who was who. And I thought it was really interesting, and I thought it was great fun, and I thought watching them play off of each other was amazing. And there's one scene, like one moment in particular, where they all come together and are doing their webs a bunch at the same time. I cannot remember where it is. It was towards the end of the fight scene. It was one particular moment, and they were all coming together, and I was just like losing my mind. I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen.
Is that against maybe Electro? Is that the second to last guy they put down?
Yeah, I think it might be. That was really cool. That was very cool. I had a blast.
Yeah, that's where the choices are the most exciting, is this action CG stuff where it actually like is really engaging, and it normally wouldn't be. So as much as there's these other choices like with the writing that I don't like, there's these other visual choices that are really competent and well instructed, especially for having to do post-credit stuff and having to shoot the cinematography and then put it in later. I think that they seamed that together really well.
Yeah. I also, Tom's Spider-Man, his final beatdown of Green Goblin, I thought was really good. I really liked that. I just looked, there was one shot where he he flips Green Goblin. I can't remember exactly what happened. That was really cool. And then of course the moment when he raises the shield to, kill Willem Dafoe again. Hopefully this time he would aim higher than the crotch, because in the first Spider-Man, he literally just gets hit in it looks like he just got stabbed in the genitals and then dies. I'm sorry. I'm just putting it out there. I'm just saying the truth.
So
We're all thinking
gentle correction. It's not a shield, it's a glider.
Sorry, I didn't mean to say that. It is a glider. That's my bad. That was just
it's the Green Goblin
slip of the
glider.
tongue.
But
I
know. Agree. It is well, I'm not talking to you as so much as the people that might be imagining it. That is one of the greatest moments, I think, of this Spider-Man trilogy, is the action sequence, the action cinematography, the build of emotion, even though they floundered Aunt May's death in a sense by having her say that line. There's all that underwriting emotion that still existed, and they paid that off by really showing him go there, and that the only thing that kept him from going off that ledge is the other Peters. And that just really, I think, is a great way to do it. It's just, once again, I wish there was another Peter that we'd never met. I wish there was another villain that we'd never met that was like big in the comics, from different runs. Like I really just wish they would have introduced a little bit more flair and not been so focused on this nostalgic motif.
Yeah. I don't know. I bought into the nostalgic motif. I didn't care. But the moment when excuse me, Tom raises the glider and then Toby catches it, I mean, everyone in the theater went wild, obviously, because it was like, oh my God. And he gives him that one look and then he puts the glider down, and I was like, damn. And I'm gonna be honest, I didn't love Peter Parker in the Raimi trilogy. Just I could not connect with him. I thought he was a little whiny baby. Sorry. I think it is very much a product of the early 2000s. I think if I had seen that in the early 2000s when it came out, I'm sure I would have been all over it. But watching it back now, I'm just thinking to myself, grow up. Also, MJ, terribly written, boring. Their romance sucks. Sorry. But the best part of those movies, obviously, it's the villains. Like Green Goblin, Doc Ock, fantastic. But this moment when he catches the glider and gives Tom that one look, I was like, okay, I buy this now. I like this. And that was really nice for me personally. And then also, there's that bit earlier in the movie where Andrew's Spider-Man was talking about how he said something like, I stopped pulling my punches after Gwen died, which of course we never got to see because we never got a third movie with him. But
in this version of our multiverse, you just got to go to a different one, Anna.
Right. But so that was also a nice way to have him, just a nice way to say that, okay, yeah, no, he also understands. He has also gone through this. And so, I don't know, it felt really nice because it felt Tom's Spider-Man got an arc. Toby's got less of an arc, but it still did tie up some loose things. He was talking to Andrew. He was like, don't lose hope about working it out in a relationship. So it's implied, he and MJ.
No, he says overtly that me and MJ are figuring out how to make things work.
Right. Exactly.
For us.
So yeah. So he's saying that it can work. And then Andrew gets to wrap up his arc through the implications that, he was in a darker place and now then he catches this MJ. So now that's his arc. It was just a really nice way to tie all three of theirs in a bow, which was really good because even though Toby did have a trilogy, it was still also kind of cut short through Sony, whatever. And Andrew obviously only had the 2 movies and they had a ton of buildup and then none of it ever paid off. So that was really nice to have a little end cap on that as a final, like, yes, here you go. We've finally followed through on these instead of just leaving y'all hanging for years and years and years. I really enjoyed that.
No, I agree. I haven't watched them all recently, so I was not getting the same payoffs that you were, but there was something that rang very pleasant to my sensibilities of watching Toby become like who he was always kind of working toward being, which is like an adult.
Yeah.
Like he was very much not an adult. He was a whiny kid. And like that was the point. He was supposed to build up into becoming an adult. And he was the most adult of all of these Spider-Men. And I think that really shows off. And like the just like small touches about how he's in plain clothes and you can't tell that he has the suit under him. There's little things and touches that I think were really clever and really made me buy in that these were still the characters that they were supposed to be.
Yes.
Even though I hadn't seen them in years myself. So
also,
that's
really quick aside. The scene where Andrew cracks Toby's back killed me. I loved that. That was amazing.
It's a good scene.
All 3 of them had such nice chemistry between everyone. I love that.
So that builds up to a few different things. So we've talked about the narrative proper. We've talked about the film. Now there's annoying questions for you that I don't have any idea what they are. So I'm just asking them to you, like, what's next? Do we see a team up Spider-Man movie with these 2? Like they weren't sent back, right?
They were sent back. They vanished into they said poof.
Yep. But how do we do we know for sure that they're not going to be in the same world? And, can we get a buddy Spider-Man movie?
We probably could. I think this is another thing where Marvel loves to be kind of not open-ended because they definitely
this is Sony
but it's Marvel and Sony working together,
Well, with those 2 properties, isn't it just Sony or no?
Yeah. So, I mean, for this movie specifically, but yeah, so those others are just Sony, but I think Marvel is leaving the door open where if they wanted to bring them back into their Marvel, they could. I don't know if Sony's going to follow up into anything. Just in the, because now that the multiverse is open, you can do whatever. So if they see this reception and they're like, oh my God, we really want to bring them back, I feel like Toby probably wouldn't, but Andrew, maybe, I don't know.
Andrew's the Spider-Man.
I know them, I know them personally. I know exactly what they would do, right? Whatever. Yeah. Wait, what's next? Were you asking?
Yeah. So I was asking what's next, but it sounds like you have a totally different read on this, where I was thinking that since these are Sony characters and Sony properties, and this was, I'm guessing, going to make a lot of money, like you could just have them not go back to the world that they're supposed to, and then just do like a buddy Spider-Man movie if you wanted to. Like, but
if they're not going back to the world they're supposed to, then that's the main MCU. So that wouldn't be just Sony. So the only way it could be just Sony is if they go back to their only the Amazing Spider-Man world or only their Sam Raimi world.
Right. So if they both went into the Sam Raimi world, say.
Oh, okay, that's what
you know what I mean.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, how does Sony maximize this? Because capitalistic tendencies are that after great success, you will maximize this. And since Marvel, the MCU proper, well, it sounds like you might have a different reading. I didn't think would bring them back, or I didn't think that it would, be a strategy to bring them back. But yeah, in general, what does this mean next? What's happening now?
I mean, to be clear, I don't think they will bring them back, but they definitely could. Just because now that the multiverse is open, there are all sorts of shenanigans to get up to. Honestly, I have no idea. My feeling would be that if Sony does follow up on this, it would only be with Andrew's Spider-Man, just because Tobey Maguire has kind of stepped back from acting. So if he wanted to, then that's great. I wanted to like do more. That would be great. I just don't know if he would.
Yeah. I mean, it's just the two of them together would be so
I know
pleasant. Yeah, it'd be like 22 Jump Street,
Yeah. Yeah. One thing though that makes me really excited is that there's been recently like a lot of discourse on the internet. I hate the word discourse, but here we are, about how the MCU Peter Parker is not really comics Peter Parker because he has sugar daddies to give him all this fancy tech, and it's not as, to use a Dungeons and Dragons term, homebrew. It's not as homebrewy as Andrew and Toby's were, and as he is in the comics. And there's not really an emphasis on him, struggling to make ends meet or paying rent on time. And now that this MCU Peter Parker has literally no one, now we're kind of going to get the quote unquote real Spider-Man, where he is struggling to pay rent and has to work really hard and is very stressed to balance all of this stuff and doesn't have the resources that he got from knowing Tony Stark and Doctor Strange and everyone. So I'm really excited to see where this goes. I would kill so many people to have a really good Harry Osborn arc. I would literally murder people. So I really want them. I really, really, really want them to do some sort of college Harry Osborn arc and actually stick the landing, do all the payoffs, stick the landing. I think that would, because I think Harry Osborn has the potential to be just like the best villain in the MCU verse. I mean, Willem Dafoe, obviously the GOAT, right? But
well, you're saying MCU, and I'm just thinking like that's a lot of villains. I would have to spend some time thinking about those villains.
Well, I just think not the best one necessarily, but just because the potential for all of the tragedy there is just so high. It'd be a bit like Loki, who is probably the best villain, and that's because his arc is very tragic because it's presented as, okay, these are these brothers, and then he betrays him, whereas it's Harry Osborn, they're best friends. He betrays him. I don't really know how that would work because they haven't really done anything with Oscorp in Marvel world. So,
and they said that the Office wasn't there, so yeah. I don't know what the deal would be.
Right. If they wanted to, I'm sure they could. I would love that. I really want that so badly.
So that's what you want, but what do you think's gonna like? What did this actually set up? What does the after credits scene mean? What does the end of the film mean when he walks away from MJ? You know, like in the rain.
Is he huge Doctor Who flashbacks? Also,
is he going
memory
to
wiping? Traumatic.
Come back and actually pursue her? Is he actually going to go to college? You know, like, what do you think is the next step?
I mean, I don't think they're gonna just ixnay, move Zendaya and Jacob Batalon out of the MCU movies. They might. Here's what I think. I don't know anything. This is just all Anna speculation. But I feel it. My feeling is they'll have a couple, 1 or 2 Spider-Man movies where he doesn't do anything with MJ and Ned and maybe just watches them from afar in a non-creepy way. And then something happens. He finds them again, or maybe they probably get their memories back. But I think, I think they'll probably do a college arc, because you saw him studying for his GED. So, which also very sad. He has to go through high school again. Depressing. Not actually go through high school again, but he graduated and has to take the GED. Like, oh, buddy. Yeah. And then I guess we're gonna get some sort of Venom or symbiote thing. So I assume that'll come to fruition at some point. So the thing with Marvel is they'll just set up a bunch of things and they don't know how they're going to pay off. And then they'll just down the road, they'll just be like, hey, we did this. Let's bring it back. And I'll just sit there and I'll eat it up. It'll be great.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the second after credit scene is really not an after credit scene. It's actually like half of a trailer for Sam Raimi's new Doctor Strange film, Multiverse of Madness.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad I nailed that. Thank you for the approving nod and laughter. What do you think of what you saw of Sam Raimi's new superhero movie?
I thought it looked sick. I thought it looked great. There are definitely moments in that where I could get, because Sam Raimi did horror, right? Horror-ish stuff. And
Evil Dead Part 2. Yeah.
But I was feeling that horror vibe, which I know. So they brought in Scott Derrickson for the first one, and the thinking behind that, as far as I know, was that, this is a horror, guys, so we're gonna make it really kooky and weird and scary, and it wasn't. It was just kind of standard Marvel movie with like a tiny bit more flavor. But this actually looks like it's gonna be properly not a horror movie, but just unsettling,
referential to a horror film.
Yeah. And I also think because if you watched What If, there was that whole arc where Doctor Strange in that became Strange Supreme, where he basically ingested all these Lovecraftian beasts and became really gaunt looking, and it was very
cool. Okay.
It was really cool. Like that was the best episode of What If, I think, was when it was the one about Doctor Strange doing that. But it definitely looks like that version of Strange is going to be in this in some capacity, which is very exciting, because I think that's why I think he might become my favorite Phase 4 character, because I think the capacity for him, because he has like the quippiness of Tony Stark, which I love, and people always compare the two, but he actually has a willingness to go out, not throw his morals out the window, but a bit. I mean, he can be way more callous.
Well, unless I misread it, I mean, the other boon of this new Doctor Strange is that there's 2 of them, and one of them appears to be much more evil than the other.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm very intrigued. Also, Wanda's going to be in it, which is great. Love her.
Yep.
I think I'm very, very excited for it. And they're introducing America Chavez, who is part of the Young Avengers.
Okay. So another buildup of the Young Avengers potentially.
Yep.
All right. Any last things on that, or should we move on to Nightmare Alley?
I love Andrew Garfield.
What is your name?
Stanton Carlisle.
Are you a true medium?
Yes, I am.
Mr. Carla,
Doctor, how about that?
please lay down.
Can you read minds?
Yes, I can. Under the right circumstances.
Keep your answers brief.
What do I want?
To be found out, same as everybody else.
Are you in contact with the beyond?
All right, Anna, Nightmare Alley. You saw this, I believe, earlier today. I saw this a little over a week and a half ago, I think. Why don't you give us a rundown of the plot of Nightmare Alley from Guillermo del Toro?
All right. Well, it's about this dude named Stan. Stan? Yes. Who's played by
Stan.
Yes. Who's played by Bradley Cooper.
Mhm.
And he takes up with the circus carnival thing. And it's basically about him learning to become a carny, as they say. And specifically, he meets up, he works a lot with Toni Collette's character, Xena
the Seer.
Yep. I saw this at 12:15 today. I really should have a better memory, but oh well. And her and Pete, who's played by David Strathairn,
Mhm.
and they do a whole thing where they're, fake psychics, basically. So
No,
Bradley
they
Cooper.
did do.
Yeah.
They did do. We meet them at a point where they don't anymore, and there's like a reason
Right.
why.
Well, Toni Collette's still doing it. Pete is not.
No, she's just doing tarot readings. They're not doing the
She has
notebook
like,
stuff
well,
anymore.
she has the cards. Oh yeah, they're not the notebook
Yeah,
stuff,
yeah,
but
yeah.
she has the cards where people are like, okay, I'm getting a
Oh,
sense
the
from
presentation
Abigail.
thing. Yeah. Very different
So-
than what he goes on to do.
Yes, for sure.
And
But
what they gave up.
Same vein, yeah. But so eventually, Bradley Cooper, you were talking about a notebook, so he finds this notebook that Pete had that's basically ways to read people and learn information about them and go convince them that they know what's happening on quote unquote the other side, and they can communicate with people, and they know, or if someone's holding an object, they know what object they're holding and what it's made of and everything. And it was all through, verbal code and gestures and everything. So he gets this notebook, and then he runs away with Rooney Mara, who plays a girl named Molly at the carnival. She is a carny at the carnival.
Mhm.
Anyway, so they not run away. They go away. It's not like they're chasing in the middle.
They
of the
were
night.
going to run away, and then things happen, and it's not so much run away as agreed upon departure.
Yeah. So then they have their own show, but then Stan gets caught up with Kate Blanchett, who looks amazing in this movie, as she usually does, but she's just
Yeah, I was about to
coolest.
say, have you ever seen her in a movie?
I know, but she's every time I see her, I'm just like, you're so cool.
Like, if you just go
And
back and watch her in Lord of the Rings, like,
I
or
know.
as Elizabeth, like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
No, she's so cool. So, and then she and Bradley Cooper have this very weird psychosexual stuff going on, and she helps him out because she's a therapist, and she'll tell him the juicy details on the people that he's talking to. So she'll be like, okay, this guy's son died in the war. And so Bradley Cooper will say, okay, I'm now, I'm speaking to your son, or whatever
Mhm.
is going on. And so then am I going the full spoiler? I guess this is full spoilers, right?
Mhm. But
Okay.
in case you're listening, and full spoilers, continue.
Okay. So anyway, so then Bradley Cooper basically gets too big for his britches, and then he tries to talk to this one dude whose name I'm forgetting, but it's played by
Ezra
Richard
Grindle.
Jenkins, I believe. Yes. And that goes terribly wrong, and it turns out Kate Blanchett does not actually really give that many figs about him, and she shoots him in the ear, which is pretty fun. He kills a couple of guys. Molly leaves him. He becomes an alcoholic, and then he winds up back at a carnival getting and there's the whole thing.
Well,
where
let's
full
leave it at
circle.
that. But
Okay.
there is one of the most memorable endings to a
Yes.
film in this film. Even though I didn't love this movie, it has, I think, the most memorable ending of any piece of film this year.
Yeah, that movie, not that movie. The ending bumped this movie up for me because I was like glued when Bradley Cooper was just laughing. I was like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah.
So it's kind of a noir, it's a different style of a noir, but it is distinctly noir. It's very sinister for a noir. There is some overt references to classic films, whether it's the original film Nightmare Alley from 1947 that was based on the novel the year before, or before that, I think 1930s is when Freaks came out. There's a few moments that directly references Freaks in this film that is very satisfactory. And there's definitely a point near the end where have you ever seen Freaks?
I haven't, but that's the One of Us thing, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. One of us. One of us.
I do know that.
Yes,
I think I read an essay
after
about it.
They turn someone into a chicken.
Yeah.
Which there's earlier in the film this character called a geek who has to eat a raw chicken as it's alive. And so this reference that's made later in the film during that payoff is it's one of the, I think, the greatest like spin references of classic film, especially classic film like Freaks. But yeah, it starts off with this great imagery of Bradley Cooper, as you've seen in the trailer, doubtlessly lighting a house on fire and unceremoniously walking down a grassy hill from it. We don't know what the nature of the reason for the fire is, and he boards a bus, and arrives at that carnival. And then he meets Willem Dafoe's Clem Hotley for our second Willem Dafoe discussion this episode.
Absolute madman. Also, I'm so sorry I forgot to mention this during Spider-Man. Wait, can I say this? Because we said if you were watching Spider-Man,
no, we can't. So no.
Fudge. The meme. I'm something of a scientist. That's all. Amazing. That's all. Continue. Sorry.
So Willem Dafoe is a character who offers Bradley Cooper to come in and take this role, and he slowly and kind of unbelievably is meandering around. This is where the film really flounders for me. It chews a little bit more scenery than it needs to, and after
it feels its runtime.
Yeah, after the geek hunt where they move locations and then the geek gets out and he has to chase him down. In the beginning, everything else that happens at the carnival, really until like the first 5 minutes before Strathairn's character passes, just feels really unnecessary, and it doesn't build anyone's character for any real reason. We don't get any emotional payoffs with Ron Perlman. He just serves as this background fake dad character for Mara's Molly Cahill. It's really when Bradley is acting, capital A acting, the film comes alive.
Definitely capital A for sure.
Those interactions with Kate, some of them with Tony, and I mean it's those sequences, I think, when he's performing the act later in the film that really pulled me in. It was kind of fun to watch him at the carnival, but it didn't it all felt very superfluous. There was no real meaning there, but once they get outside of that, it really picked up legs for me. But I feel like we spend 45 minutes to an hour just kind of chewing that. But I mean, there is Mark Pavanelli, who plays the Major. Great supporting character role. He really is memorable as someone who sells it. What do you think about that first portion of the film where we're unlocking just who this Carney is?
Yeah, I agree. The opening sequence is fantastic when he puts a body in the floorboards and then lights the house on fire. I was like, damn, this movie's going places. And then it did kind of stall a lot when they got to the carnival, although it was a lot of fun.
Like an hour.
Yeah. But it was a lot of fun because the cast is just absolutely stacked, just to watch all those people go at it. But that wasn't always enough. Also, Clifton Collins Jr. was in it and was like barely a character, and I was like, boo, need more. Whatever.
Yeah, he was really briefly, just a moment. But that's the thing, when you get a I mean, even with a 2.5 hour runtime, you don't get enough room for a lot of these characters to breathe. Which, yeah, it's kind of disappointing in that. Number one, I love Guillermo del Toro as a filmmaker, and number two, this just really, like, I like a lot of the essence of what he's going for here. It just doesn't pay off for me in any real way. And other than the cameo at the end from Tim Blake Nelson, most of these cameos don't pay off. Like you mentioned, the relationship that he builds with Xena, I found really interesting. I couldn't tell exactly how sexual that was, and the way that Rooney Mara's character Molly never brought it up. There's this weird tonality thing, and I have a feeling that there's some missing footage on the cutting room floor of more of this romantic triangle or quadrangle almost, because of Straight Aaron's Pete as well being involved in this this relationship. Did you find that interesting, or was that secondary?
No, I thought it was very interesting. I also thought it was pretty funny. I don't know, the transitions that he would use, kind of old timey, like zoom in, fade to black. But specifically, there's like a scene where Bradley Cooper's in the bathtub, and Toni Collette is implied just grabs his crotch, and like then it cuts immediately to black, which I don't know. It's just that was really funny. I thought just like a little wink and a nod, like, yeah, maybe they had sex, but we're just gonna cut to black and keep it PG, except they said fuck many times, so it wasn't.
And
PG,
it's a rated R film, I believe.
Yes, it is.
And he didn't do anything like that in Shape of Water, which is part of my many secondary problems with this movie. So you touched on one of them, which is the editing choices, and I might rewatch this movie in a year, like in the summertime or something, and have a totally different reaction. But I just watched West Side Story the day before I watched this.
Yeah.
And that movie is so thoroughly directed.
Yeah.
And every ending shot is informed by the next beginning shot. And the way that Guillermo just like shoots a block of story and then fades to black and then totally uninformatively continues the story.
Yeah. I liked the transitions.
Yeah, that didn't work for me.
I mean, like the transitions, I mean, like when it was the black and then it zoomed in on the circle and then faded out, because I felt like that was like a little old timey, and I liked that. But the actual what he cut to afterwards, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, it's that he didn't use what is a fun reference to make a choice at the start of the next scene. It was very much like very discombobulated.
And they're moving over here now. Yeah.
Which, I mean, it might not be fair, because I think that West Side Story might be the best directed film of the year, like just from start to finish, like control of what the camera is showing you, the audience member. And so I'm a little bit hamstrung on whether or not my reaction is even correct because of how good
West Side Story was. Yeah,
that puddle is one of the most beautiful pieces of cinema that exists, and it's a puddle. So yeah. But anyways, enough of Steven Spielberg's very, very good remake.
I would like to plug Oscar nom for Mike Feist. That's all. I'm done. Thank you.
Sure, no problem.
I'm really plugging that everywhere.
So Rooney Mara plays a secondary character that really has no agency,
no personality,
or personality, but then she's supposed to make these big choices to like leave Bradley Cooper later on in the film, and they rang for me entirely hollow. I think we missed 2 years of them after they'd left the carnival, and they're living in that hotel where they perform now. But she's an incredibly strong performer, and I just not only felt like she was wasted, but this character seemed like a vignette cutout. It had no thoughtfulness to it. Toni Collette's Xena, I think, is a much more complex character.
Yeah.
And Cate Blanchett obviously is the greatest character in this film besides Cooper, and she might be better than Cooper, honestly.
Yeah, no, I agree. Molly as a character just felt very flat for me. No, I, like you said, I mean, Rooney Mara is a great performer. I simply could not bring myself to give a fig about what she did or the choices she made, unfortunately, even though a lot of the movie hinges on them. And I don't know, it just felt like this something that we've seen a lot before that didn't really add a new angle. Like, there's the supportive wife who gets married but then realizes that maybe her husband is not the best and he's kind of manipulating her and using her, and I don't know, it just didn't I don't know, it didn't
It
feel
wasn't an original
fresh.
take on that.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
not that you can't present that, right? Like, she's an accessory to him, and in the
Yeah.
story she's also an accessory, and there's
Yeah.
no self-awareness in the screenplay that interrogates that or
Right.
does anything really meaningful with it. It just puts her
She
rejections
just exists. Yeah.
where the plot needs those rejections
Mhm.
to be, to build tensions. And yeah, that was really disappointing. What did you so if we narrow it down to the second half, which I think we both will have a lot more to say and like a lot more, was there anything in the first half besides the chasing of the geek that you really liked other than that opening sequence?
I mean, I just liked watching Toni Collette and Willem Dafoe go at it, but in terms of specific scenes, honestly, it all kind of runs together. And I saw this movie like 5-6 hours ago, so it shouldn't, which is indicative of the first half, I think, in a lot of ways. So I really can't name a whole lot. There was that one scene where Bradley Cooper and Rooney Mara, Rooney Mara, are on the merry-go-round, and I
Yes.
liked that. That's the only thing that's popping in my head right now, though.
Okay, so there's two things for me. Like, I think that Guillermo brought the carnival to life. Like, I really do think he did.
Yes.
It just didn't do anything for the film itself.
Yeah.
It's just something he accomplished. And then the other thing for me is the slow compatriotism that he does pull off between Strathairn and Cooper.
Yes. Yeah, that was
that
good.
makes that death actually mean a lot more by the end of the film. Especially with how the film ends and just the relationship to alcoholism that is being explored in this film. But yeah, so the second half is fucking awesome and much
Yes.
better.
So cool.
And unfortunately the first half is not as good. So the second half, the crucial event is that they're giving a performance and he does this thing called making it a spook show, where they're kind of floundering and he gets really personal. And then after they get personal, they have to isolate that person and go tell them that they were performing. And the difficulty with doing that is that you kind of undermine your relationship with whoever this person is and their friends. And he is supposed to do that in front of Cate Blanchett, who would later go on to give him all these wealthy clients, and he chooses not to. And he goes one-on-one and he figures out that she has a pistol in her purse. And a fantastic scene, expertly lit, really well shot, really engaging. And that sets up the whole secondary part of the film where she slowly kind of Black Widows him. She reels him in and gets him, trusting her without even thinking about trusting her, and doing these little jobs and storing the money that he makes in her safe in her office where she practices psychiatry. And what do you think about all that?
That was so cool. I love that. That first scene where Bradley Cooper is in her office and she starts to kind of psychoanalyze him, I thought was fantastic. That really, once that started to happen, I was like, okay, I'm back into it. I'm ready. Let's go. I mean, those are just two fantastic performers and they were amazing. And that's just, it was such a more interesting relationship than anything that he and Molly had going on. And obviously it is supposed to be a lot more sinister, but I don't know, it just, the fact that they had they being Stan and Lilith is her name, which tips you off kind of that she's probably up to no good, but their relationship was just so much, just miles more interesting than his relationship with Molly. And I know that he obviously Stan is drawn in Lilith, I feel like in large part because of the like that edge there, which Molly doesn't have. But like you were saying, there's no interrogation of like, well, Molly actually has these good qualities that we're ignoring. It's literally just this character is so much more interesting. I want to spend way more time with her. But
well, it's not just that. There's the electricity, the palpable enticement between Kate and Bradley that did not exist between Rooney and Bradley. And I don't know if that was direction wise or if that was actually just a lack of chemistry that existed. But watching those two and the way that Kate goes, you never drink. Why do you say the word never? Just the way that she digs her claws in and really just kind of starts to make him pull himself apart voluntarily for her.
Yep.
It's just delicious.
Who among us would not voluntarily pull ourselves apart for Kate Blanchett? Honestly.
Yeah.
She was fantastic.
I can't say that I wouldn't. It leads into like a proving sequence where he has to go show what he can do to some friends to build up a reputation to eventually get to Richard Jenkins' character. And one of them that he interacts with is Mary Steenburgen.
Yeah.
And she is very minor. It's definitely a cameo, but the arc of this character and the timing of when they flash back to her choice is amazing. She'd had a son pass and he pretends to commune with the son and he says that everything's okay here and I'm waiting for you when you get here, essentially is what Bradley tells her. And at the end of the film, in a very I don't remember exactly when it's staggered, but it's during I think that that larger climax where murders are happening pretty frequent to each other. We cut to her talking to her husband about going and seeing their dead son. And she pulls a pistol out and she just shoots him in the head out of nowhere. And then she turns it back on herself and commits suicide. And it's one of the most interesting choices in this film is to show the actual effects of the people that don't know that it was a spook show and making that spook show thing actually have these stakes and understanding what Xena and Pete were talking about, like the reason why you can't do this. I really liked that payoff, even though it was minor.
Yeah. And that, because earlier in the movie, Bradley Cooper, when he was talking about keeping up the spook show basically, and Rooney Mara's character was like, no, maybe let's not do that. But he was saying, but think of all the peace we're bringing these people. We're really helping them in a way to try to convince himself to keep doing it because he just loved the money trip. Yeah, and the money. And it was what Tony Collette and David Strader were warning him about. Like, you can't do this for multiple reasons, but also you start to believe it's real. And by that point of the movie, Bradley Cooper had totally convinced himself that he had just convinced himself that, we're actually really helping these people and everything. And then you see that and it's just absolutely, you're just reminded, nope, really not. You're really just in this for your own gain here.
Yeah. But I mean, there's a social awkwardness too, where it's like, even though we know he should, we kind of don't want him to because of the awkwardness that we have to watch of like him saying that he lied to that. Like, it's just,
your dead son didn't actually speak to us. Sorry. Deal with it.
There's a few different moments that are very charged with anxiety where we almost want him to not do the right thing and he doesn't do the right thing in most of those moments. And when he does it almost feels worse for the audience because we have to deal with that anxiety of him admitting what he did in lying publicly. So the ending is a pretty fast sequence. It relies on not just Richard Jenkins, but there's what's his name, Holt McCauley,
Oh, his
Macaulay, the
bodyguard person thing.
I think it's Holt McCallany, and he is in
Yeah.
gosh, he's in that Mindhunter. He's great in
Okay,
Mindhunter.
yeah.
And he plays this bodyguard that's got like complete allegiance to Richard Jenkins' magnate character. And so Cooper has to not only pull off this grift on Jenkins' character, he has to find a way to convince Jenkins to force McCallany to allow him to perform this grift at the same time. And that's where I think it gets at some of the more intriguing parts of what it would be to be this carny ripping people off. What do you think about that build before we get to this finale?
No, I thought that was really cool. I think it's interesting because I think, Bradley Cooper his character becomes more and more comfortable in this role as a grifter. And even though Cate Blanchett earlier had been like, hey, this guy is very unpredictable, erratic, dangerous, Bradley Cooper had just become so full of himself and confident that it kind of got the audience, at least me, feeling also comfortable in how talented he was at this. So, when the tables do eventually turn, it's also shocking to the audience, even though everything of course had been leading up to that. But I was also hoodwinked by Bradley Cooper because he was so effective. I was like, yes, you could pull this off. Totally no issues whatsoever. So I thought they did a very good build up. I don't know if the payoff, the bodyguard did not end up being as important as I thought. I thought that was a little disappointing for payoff, but the things around it I thought were great, except for, again, Molly, because Molly says, I'm leaving, and then Bradley Cooper catches her and he says no, and then she comes back and helps him basically right away, and there are almost zero consequences for that. You really could have just had her help and then decide to leave after, and it would have been basically the same.
Yeah. So there's a few things. The magnate overall they wasted too much time in the beginning, or they spent too much time in the beginning, and they didn't actually give a sense of like Jenkins' character being this crazy man of great import,
power. Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why The Shape of Water works so well, is that they focus on the characters that really matter, even the side characters, and they build things out, and they kind of keep you engaged with things that actually matter at the end the whole time.
Yeah.
And here they try to build out the world, but they end up just killing everybody. And while it makes it interesting for the main character's arc, it doesn't really inform these things. And I don't know if it's marketing or if it's actually the way that he views it and that he wants to continue, but he views this as a prequel to The Shape of Water, and I don't see how that has anything to do with it, and it doesn't build out that same world. What's happening here is distinctly not magical. It is really effective psychological manipulations and good guesswork and playing off people's tells, things that magicians in our world actually are capable of. So all that in conjunction with the way that things pay off, it's so violent that it kind of overpowers the issues that lay a little bit in the way that it was presented. There's not enough time for these characters, and it's not a quick jaunt. It's a 2.5 hour movie. If it was 90 minutes, that and it was just the second half of the film, I think I'd feel very differently about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I was saying earlier, I really thought there was going to be a lot more payoff to the bodyguard, because there are multiple times where he says, if you touch this man, if you do anything, I'll kill you. I'll mess up your life forever. And then he just ended up getting run over by a car, and that was it. I don't know. He
was ran over like 3 times.
Yeah.
I will say it wasn't it was pretty brutal.
Like flopped up. Yes. Also, but I will say at the end with when it suddenly there was all this kind of body horror stuff going on. I was vibing with that, where it just everything kind of exploded in violence. I was vibing with that, but I liked the buildup, but I don't know if the buildup was building up to what actually paid off, if that makes sense. Because I was cool with what they were doing, but I don't know if what they were doing matched how they ended it. I don't know if that's making any sense, but in my mind, it is.
Yeah, so you like the tension built, but you don't know if what actually occurred paid off the tension correctly. Or
Yes,
like
exactly.
and even an intriguing
Exactly.
way. And I would agree, because I mean, at the end of the day, it's just a failed grift with a double homicide.
Right.
And it is really exciting to watch, but this is where the actual end of the movie makes up for a lot of the issues that I have with this climax scene, which is where he's summoning this woman who Jenkins had forced to have an abortion, and he makes Rooney Mara dress up as this character and bring her into the park. And he sets this whole thing up to try to get Jenkins to feel like he's encountered her, but he won't stop. And he runs all the way up to the figure, clutches her, figures out that it's not her, and starts freaking out and threatening to destroy everything that Cooper is, loves, and has. And Cooper reacts by killing him very brutally. And then
that was icky.
I really liked the murder.
Oh,
I thought that was one of the more distinctive images.
But when I saw it in the theater, I was like, oh my God, like I could feel my toes curling,
Yeah, as the bone crunching sounds happen.
Yep.
And
then later when he's picking a bone out of his knuckle.
Yeah, it was teeth or bone.
God. Yeah. Ooh.
It was brutal.
But good image. Yeah.
And then equally the bone crunching scenes where he runs over the bodyguard.
Yep.
Right. And this is the failed grift. And the failed grift is what leads him to find out, as he runs to Cate Blanchett's character, goes to the safe, and everything's gone. That's where he finds out that he was the one being grifted the whole time.
Yeah.
And while I like it, it's just something about the way that the story's structured, where it just, even though that's fun, it doesn't make the problems with the movie work. It just makes that moment solid.
Yeah.
And it leads to this downfall, which had occurred slightly before that, where she'd constantly been putting this whiskey out, and he eventually starts taking these drinks. And we know, because of a story that we're told from Willem Dafoe, that there might be something in these drinks that he might be getting addicted to that's more than just the whiskey. And the way that this slowly builds into full alcoholism, his complete downfall, and eventual what happens at the very end of the film, that's like, it's one of the most memorable things that happened in cinema this year. And it's incredibly intriguing. It's just, there were 2 hours and 10 minutes that are really unbalanced that happened before that.
Yeah. Also, earlier, the same thing with the bodyguard not having importance, and just how it just kind of felt like some disparate parts that didn't really add up. Like the climax when Rooney Mara comes out in that dress and everything. I just think, like, I feel like it would have been much more interesting if Rooney Mara had actually left and there had been consequences for that, and he had to deal with it that way. I don't know. Obviously, I'm not a scriptwriter, and I'm not one for a reason. However, but like I was saying earlier, Rooney Mara's first little escape attempt has basically no effect on the plot and very little on the characters, because I don't think it adds anything new, because we knew that she had been unhappy with how this was going, and we knew that Bradley Cooper was going too far in what he was doing. So I don't think it showed a new side of them. You could have cut that out, and it could have been basically the same movie. Same thing. You could have cut the bodyguard out entirely, and it could have basically been the same movie.
The bodyguard makes the interactions with Jenkins more
charged.
Yeah. Like, if he messes up and Jenkins doesn't catch him, there's still someone else that can catch him. That makes it a little bit more loaded with tension. But there are moments of dialogue where he seems to foreshadow or imply things that are not
never
as
happens.
well. Even though it doesn't happen, it's just like nothing related to it happens either.
Yeah.
Until the very end. And I think that that's honestly that a lot of my qualms with this film are because it's a first time writer of a full screenplay working with
Yeah.
Guillermo del Toro here. I think her name is Kim Morgan. It's Kim Morgan. And it's a solid first effort for a screenplay, but there's weaknesses here that are pretty large in conjunction to the thematic payoffs that occur, especially at the end. But they do pull off one of the most memorable endings of cinema this year. So you can't be too bitter about it. Is there anything else on Nightmare Alley that we should dig into?
I mean, I just love, I know you've already talked about this, but that ending shot was just so good. And I thought I didn't really, it went on for a really long time because it's just Bradley Cooper realizing what he's become and how he's going to be the exact same person who was earlier in the movie, but he's becoming that man.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought,
or he already did. He already did.
Yeah, but like specifically rejoining the carnival, and the guy says it's only a temporary gig, which is exactly what Willem Dafoe said earlier in the movie. He's like, "Oh, to entice
with the
them,
drink,
you have to say, yeah, it's a temporary gig with the drink, and it's laced with opium or whatever." And then the guy does the exact same thing, and then there's just, I thought the end, it was just gonna be kind of a quick cut to Bradley Cooper, I don't know, fade to black, but just to watch that realization play out for a very long time. I don't know how long they held the camera on his face when this was happening, but it was quite lengthy. And then he just starts to lose it and starts laughing and crying.
Well, he says that line, right? Like, you don't understand. I'm the perfect guy for this job or whatever, like he goes full ham, and it's a great moment. There's a few things about Mara's role where it's either she wasn't the right character or it wasn't written well, and the other one is like I really like Cooper. I think I've come up on him as an actor quite a bit, but I don't know that he played this as well as another performer might have. He's not quite sneaky enough. And it's hard for me to buy into his ill intent. He eventually gets me there, especially at the end. Like he is a wonderfully talented performer. I just wonder if some of this would have played better with a more sneaky or suspicious character that isn't quite as handsome actor as he is.
Yeah. Huh. Interesting. I thought he was very good throughout, but I understand that. And now I'm thinking about it. That's very intriguing. I will be ruminating on this
because he has like a square jaw, and you just wonder if like someone with a smaller
square
face,
jaw, really nice blue eyes,
right? Like so, Clifton Collins Jr. Just imagine a smaller, more diminutive,
unobtrusive
man. Yeah, maybe playing this role instead of a guy that could have gone and been a lumberjack. Like he could have done whatever he wanted to do as far as menial jobs go. Any closing statements, or should we end there?
My closing statements are that I don't know. It was good. Bradley Cooper was great. Kate Blanchett is so cool, which I've already said like 5 times. That's my biggest takeaway: is Kate Blanchett continues to be the coolest human being. That's
if she is, her and Tilda Swinton, we don't know.
That's true. I think she's probably actually Galadriel, but who knows?
Well, I mean, it depends on which Earth you live in.
That's true. The multiverse.
I was thinking Middle Earth.
Never mind. Thought you were tying it back to the multiverse and Spider-Man. Never mind.
Yep. Well, we can do that as well. But all right, let's leave it there. Thank you so much for joining me, Anna. I will have you back again in the future. I don't know for what, but I do know that eventually one of those titles will be Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll at least have a conversation about that, and I'm sure we'll talk about some other movies before then.
Exciting. Then you can't even introduce me as head Marvel correspondent. So you're gonna have to think of a new title.
I'll work on thinking of that new title. You send me the
do
paperwork.
some workshopping.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
Run! Go! Get to the chopper!
We have to go.
I'm coming with you.
That was brilliant.
You're the best!